Hi, I'm Michelle Grazoulis, and I'm president of the Foundations at Rochester Regional Health. Thank you for joining us today for a Facebook Live on diabetes and diabetes education. I am very happy to be joined today by Amy Stacy and Karen Gesell. I get it right, Karen? Gesell. Gesell.
Close.
Diabetes educators at Rochester Regional Health. Thank you both for being with me today. I appreciate it.
It is a treat.
Good.
Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, you're more than welcome. So, as I said a moment ago, we're here to talk about diabetes education. For those of you listening, if you have questions, please feel free to write them in, and I'll pause in a few minutes and see what questions you might have. But let's jump in and get started and talk a little bit about diabetes. So I know 1 in 3 Americans have prediabetes, and 90% of the folks that have prediabetes don't know it. So talk to me a little bit about that, and what does that mean for people? And let's start with you.
Sure. So prediabetes clinically means that your average 3-month average blood sugar is between 5.7 and 6.4.
Okay.
So that's, you can tuck that away at a later date and see what your A1C is if it's ever been checked. But if someone has their blood work checked and they're in that zone of prediabetes, there's a ton of things you can do to prevent or delay the onset of type 2 diabetes.
So a question as you said that. So if I'm somebody walking around with my A1C in that range, is there ways that I would know it without having my blood checked?
Very unlikely.
Okay.
Really, the best way is to make sure that you at least check in with your primary care doctor at least once a year.
And when we go in for our primary care checkups, that's a standard thing that's checked, right?
Usually,
Okay.
but I encourage people to ask your primary care doctor to have that done as an adult. You know, around the age of 30 plus, I can't remember the exact standards of care, but around the age of 30 plus, you should have your A1C checked once a year.
Okay, very helpful, thank you. So Amy, one other question for you as we're talking about that. So, you know, most of us who know about diabetes, because we hear about type 1 and type 2, and I know there's over 20 types of diabetes, but we don't have enough time today to go into all that. So let's focus on type 1 and type 2.
Yes.
First of all, very high level, what's the difference between those two?
Okay, very simply, type 1 diabetes is truly an autoimmune disease, and it means your body just stops making insulin. Type 2 diabetes is a very different type of diabetes. It's very complex. There's a multitude of things that go wrong that cause type 2 diabetes. It is genetically based, and there are things that you can do on a daily basis to help prevent or delay the onset
Of type 2.
of type 2.
Okay, so I want to just clarify that for the listeners and for myself.
Sure.
So is it fair to say that type 1 is your body just stops making it, and is that the type of diabetes that we hear about relative to if you have a weight problem, or does it not? Are those
Type 1 diabetes would not be based on weight, anything. It's
That's
not
type 2.
lifestyle. Right.
Okay, so that's very helpful. Okay, so we talked a little bit about what causes them. Karen, talk to me a little bit about risk factors.
Okay, Michelle. So when it comes to the risk factors, I'm going to be talking about type 2 diabetes. Because we know type 2 diabetes is much more prevalent. 90 to 95% of people who are diagnosed with diabetes have type 2.
Okay.
So when it comes to the risk factors, there's those that we can control, and then there's those that we can't control. So the ones you can't control, examples would be your age.
Yeah.
So anybody that's over the age of 45 is going to be at a higher risk for type 2 diabetes. Any woman who has had gestational diabetes, there's a greater chance of developing diabetes later on in life.
I did not know that.
Family history. So if there's a strong family history of type 2 diabetes, parents or siblings that have type 2 diabetes, it increases your risk. And then the last one would be race. Certain races are more predisposed to type 2 diabetes, and that's African Americans, Hispanics, Asian Americans, and Native Americans.
Okay.
And then we have those that we can control. So if we're looking at things we can control, our weight and our activity. So people who are overweight and live a sedentary lifestyle are going to be more at risk for type 2 diabetes.
Okay, that's helpful. So this leads right into the 3 pillars of diabetes prevention, which we talked about a moment ago. So for those risk factors, there's things that we can all do to reduce our risk and the probability that we get it, and what are they?
Well, I'm a very simple person, and so this is the absolute easiest way for me to think about it, is using W's, so it's 3 W's, controlling your weight, pushing water. We could talk a long time about the amazing benefit water is, and also, what's the
Walking.
third one? Walking.
Walking, yeah.
Look it, I blanked out.
Remember that.
That's scary. So,
Did my homework.
controlling your weight, walking, and drinking your water. Those 3 simple things can help
And
immensely.
Is it fair to say that we say walking, but what you really mean is some form of exercise?
Exercise,
Yeah, so
yeah.
is it cardiovascular exercise?
Anything.
Okay.
Muscle is your friend.
Oh,
and,
that's good to
and
know.
I won't get into it all, but there's so many amazing things that muscle cells do to help control our blood sugar.
So one other question to that end. So as someone who's aging, who's female, focusing more on weightlifting as a form of, building strength long-term as I age, does weightlifting help as well? Because that builds muscle mass?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. So water, walking or exercise, and weight control. Got it. Okay. How much water?
Oh, nobody.
Thank you, Phil.
Nobody could tell you exactly how much water. And Karen, chime in on this. Now, all of us, I think, have heard 64 ounces a day. Well, that might be true for you. It might be a little more. It might be a little less. The reality is, the older we get, the most of us do not drink enough water.
Okay.
So just making sure that you're including a glass of water with every meal. You might want to start out the day with water, but water literally can help flush any extra sugar out through our urine,
Okay.
which is amazing.
Yeah, that's really
as long as
powerful
your
to know.
kidneys are healthy.
Yeah, yeah. So Karen, I know we talked, as I was doing some research as well, and then we talked a little bit before we went on air about some of the technologies that are available, and I know you have some props, but let's talk about what people who are managing diabetes use to manage diabetes.
So there's a lot of different medical devices out there today, and one of them includes insulin pumps. Insulin pumps are basically just a system for helping to deliver the insulin, and there's an example of an
Okay.
insulin pump, and it just helps to deliver the insulin much more precisely. So people with diabetes have different insulin needs throughout their day, and we can program the pump to give them more or less depending on what their needs are.
Okay?
So another device that's on the market is what they call a continuous glucose monitor. And the continuous glucose monitor helps to monitor the blood or sensor glucose values throughout the day. And this gives a person an approximate idea of where their blood sugars are. But what's even more cool about it is it helps to tell the direction and speed that a person's blood sugars are moving. So some of them come with alarms that can alarm a person when their blood sugar is dropping too low or rising too quickly, and then they can make treatment decisions based on where their sugars are trending.
Okay. So this may seem like a basic question, but I think it bears, thank you, Phil. It bears discussion, very high level. People need to do this who are managing diabetes, because if they don't and their blood sugar spikes, ultimately what happens?
So ultimately, if they have very high blood sugars and they don't realize it, they can end up in the hospital with what's called diabetic ketoacidosis. And if they go low, same thing. They, could pass out and end up in the hospital with an extremely low blood sugar.
Okay. Clearly a piece of this then is managing what you eat and the role that probably food and diet plays in this. So I know you're both advocates of a plant-based diet, and I know there's a ton out there now about plant-based diets, but let's just spend a few minutes on why you both feel that's critical as it relates to diabetes and overall health.
Plants, vegetables have a multitude of benefits to our bodies between macronutrients, carbohydrate, little fats, protein, as well as those micronutrients like vitamins and minerals. But also we now have a better understanding, more to learn, about phytochemicals, all these natural good antioxidants that are in plants that are good for our body. And the goal with your diet is to decrease calories, to control your carbohydrates, but still have adequate protein, heart-healthy fat. And a plant-based diet in general can do a very good job of helping you pursue that goal.
Okay. So Karen, high level, when we say plant-based, we mean no meat products, or are you talking about predominantly making sure that your diet has more plant-based nutrients than not?
Right, so we want to meet the person where they're at, and going completely plant-based can be very difficult for many individuals. So just starting to incorporate more fruits, vegetables, whole grains, the legumes, nuts and seeds, cutting back really on the processed packaged foods that are so prevalent in the American diet. That's what we really want to try to do, is start moving towards eating more whole foods in a plant-based diet, because we know they reduce the risk of chronic diseases like heart disease,
Also
diabetes,
cardiovascular,
cancers. They help with weight control and weight loss. So those are all things that are very important. But the one thing I would want to say is diet is only a small piece of it. We really need to look at the whole person, and we need to be looking at stress management, activity, and also that socialization, community, that sense of well-being that.
And as you said, genetics as well.
And genetics plays a big factor too.
Let me pause for a second and check with Phil to see if there's any questions that have come in.
How about superfoods? Are there certain superfoods that you guys recommend? And can you ask that again?
Yeah, so the question was, are there any superfoods that would be of benefit to folks dealing with diabetes or preventing diabetes?
Whenever I hear, and Karen, forgive me, whenever I hear the term superfoods, this may show my age, but I think of Superman with his cape flying through the air. Unfortunately, it would be so simple if there was one or two superfoods that we should include. My perspective as a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, is that there are numerous good foods, particularly from the plant-based diet, that are especially good for us. Now, I want to hear Karen's perspective.
I would say the same thing, Amy. I think that what I used to tell people when I did more counseling was, eat from the rainbow. You want to eat those fruits and vegetables, and look for ones that are red, deep red, the greens, the orange,
It's amazing how many of the
purples.
same rules come back around.
Oh,
And,
it's common sense.
Yeah.
It's common sense.
So both of you obviously are huge advocates for educating as a way of learning to understand and manage. So I want to talk a little bit about a diabetes day that's coming up, and I know Amy in particular, you're very impassioned about that. So on November 2nd, we're having something called Diabetes Day. So take a few minutes and tell our listeners what that's about.
So Diabetes Day is a very special event and is close to my heart. It will take place November 2nd from 9 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon out at our Brockport facility, 6668 4th Section Road. It's in the Brockport Wegmans Plaza.
Okay.
We will have balloons, we will have freebies, we will have samples, we will have all kinds of educational products. It's a diabetes and wellness day, and the goal of this day is for anyone who's pursuing good health, specifically for those who are dealing or wanting to prevent diabetes, is that you are important. And this diagnosis or potential diagnosis of diabetes does not mean that life is over. We, as CDEs, we are here to encourage you and let you know that on a day-by-day basis, we can help you be a healthier person.
That's great. And your passion is
Hi,
abusive.
I'm very excited about it.
Which is great. So again, that's November 2nd at Brockport. Is that on our website if folks listening forget what we gave them? It'll be on our website. So I'm watching Phil shake his head yes.
Okay,
So we'll make sure it's on the
beautiful.
website.
We have to make sure it's there.
It's on the website. So before we wrap up, I want to just ask another question about resources. So these types of conversations are helpful. There are lots of, I'm sure if someone Googled diabetes, they'd get support. But what are some other things that Rochester Regional Health has focused on in terms of providing services to treat diabetes or avoid it through prediabetes awareness?
So we have several different locations where we offer individual one-on-one sessions for diabetes, pre-diabetes, weight loss, gestational diabetes. We also have group classes for diabetes, pre-diabetes. We've just started a weight loss class called Taking Off Together, which has been very successful. It's based on the Mediterranean lifestyle. We also offer plant-based cooking classes. So there's a variety of things that we can help people with diabetes and without diabetes.
Yeah.
And can I just mention that I also have a diabetes support group out in Brockport, which is helpful.
That's great. So anything that I didn't ask the two of you that you would like to share before we wrap up?
I cannot thank you enough for the honor and privilege of being here.
You are most welcome. You're very, very welcome. It's great. We love educating folks that are listening. So I want to thank Amy and Stacy for joining. I did it.
There it is.
She told me I was going to.
I knew it.
She told me I was going to do that. Amy and Karen, and I knew that too.
Love it.
So you put it in my head, so then it had to come out of my mouth.
did.
So Amy and Karen, thank you very much. It's great to meet you both. Thank you for the work you do on behalf of our patients at
You
Rochester
too.
Regional Health and the community. And thank you for joining us. If you have any questions we did not answer, please feel free to send them in, and we will get them answered for you. And have a great day. Nice job.
Such
See
fun.
you.
I did it.